Hey everyone. So today we are going to talk about the topic of the Reformation, continuing to build off this era within human history. We just talked about the Renaissance, and now we talk about the Reformation. But it actually has a different name. It could also be known as dun 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 trouble for the Catholic Church. As we talked about, really the Catholic Church controlled almost all of society within Europe. They controlled politics, they controlled economies, they controlled intellectual endeavors. Really, they controlled everything. And this continued for the first part of the Renaissance. However, as we talked about, the ideas of secularism and humanism started to make people think that maybe there's more than just belief in God or what the Catholic Church is telling us. And so people started to look elsewhere for guidance for earthly matters. And in response to that, the Catholic Church had also started new practices that, when compared to secularism and humanism, didn't necessarily fit. And so people suspected them even more after this. So one practice that they started doing was called indulgences. And so this include paying the Catholic Church for forgiveness from God and admission to heaven. Okay? And this substituted for confession and penance, in which you go into a dark room and you confess your sins to the priest. Um, Instead of this, you're going to pay money and then you can get into heaven. Obviously feels a little bit fishy. The next one is the sale of relics. Okay, they would sell off these things that they would say were tied to Jesus or tied to disciples of Jesus when he was on earth. And so this was very corruptible because you almost feel like you're being sold a bill of goods. You're being sold something that isn't actually what it seems. And so people really started to question whether the Catholic Church was in it for spirituality or were they in it for money. Okay? At least some people. The other two things that you want to make sure that you're connecting to this time is that there's corruption going on in the church, that the Catholic Church is collecting taxes but also is exempt from taxes, so they don't have to pay anything. And so people are really, really concerned about this. And some people are even starting to question the legitimacy of the church and maybe backing away from it. So, really, in the beginning of the 1500s, we see here the massive amount of power that the Catholic Church has. Okay, people have to follow Catholicism in many of these countries, and in terms of land ownership, the Catholic Church is in control of a fifth to a third of all of Europe. Okay, now imagine how much land that actually is. That includes more than a lot of countries. Okay? I mean, that's 20 to 33% of all land in Europe. But then we get a man whose name is Martin Luther. Okay? And Martin Luther is a monk for the Catholic Church. However, Martin Luther goes on a trip to Rome. And while he's there, he sees several things that he cannot stand, he cannot abide by. The first one was the treatment of relics. Okay, while he's there, he observes the remains of a saint being displayed within the Vatican, within Rome, um, and people were selling tickets to come see the remains of this person. So that was one of the strikes. The other one, the practice of indulgences, paying to get into heaven, was something that he was extremely uncomfortable about. And so what he does is he decides to write something called the 95 Theses. And so again, we're reminded that indulgences here referring to paying some money to go to heaven. Okay, um, obviously doesn't quite sit right with a lot of people. So, like I said, Martin Luther writes the 95 Theses. And the 95 Theses were 95 issues that he had with the Catholic Church. 95, you know, criticisms of the Catholic Church. And he posted it on the wall of the local monastery, the local church, um, to say, hey, this is what's happening. I don't find this to be right. I find this, the Catholic Church really needs to change their ideas on this. And he was able to start spreading these ideas farther and farther through the use of the printing press. Okay, as it says at the bottom there, invented by Johannes Gutenberg. And over time, as word starts to spread, and we're talking in 1517, because that's when he posts the 95 Theses. Okay? We see more and more people that are both agreeing with Martin Luther and also are very, very much opposed to Martin Luther. Okay, so he posted in 1517, he's a member of the church. By 1520, the Pope excommunicated Martin Luther from the Catholic Church. He was kicked out. He could no longer be associated with the Catholics. Okay, and in 1521, Charles V, who was the king of the Holy Roman Empire, declared Martin Luther a criminal. He tries to have him arrested as well. Okay, and what Martin Luther finds in that moment, though, is that some of the other nobles are seeing Martin Luther's rebellion against the Catholic Church as a good thing for their power. And so Frederick of Saxony, which is a part of Germany, pledges support to Luther. He grants him protection at his castle, and Martin Luther escapes this arrest. So throughout Germany, we start seeing the Reformation occur. And all Reformation refers to is a reforming. Okay? So in Germany, princes in northern Germany converted to Protestantism. And it really was a signal, a huge thing, that the Catholic Church's power was being affected. Okay? And it ended the authority of the Pope in their particular little kingdoms. Okay? However, in Germany, we have two different things going on. We have the Protestant side with agreeing with Martin Luther. And if you think about it, the word Protestant, protest, okay, they are protesting the Catholic Church, okay? And so these Protestants, as they're coming to be known, are going head to head with the preeminent power within Germany at this time, and with what becomes Germany at this time, which is the Holy Roman Empire. And the Holy Roman Empire is ruled by these people called the Hapsburgs. Okay. Now, later on down the road, conflicts between Protestants and Catholics start to result in wars that occur across Europe, but are really starting to see here in Germany. And we'll talk much more about these consequences going forward. So going back to the Holy Roman Empire, this was an empire that existed as sort of a standard bearer for Catholicism and what they viewed as being Christian, at the time, which was only Catholicism, according to them. And so it extended throughout Germany, and what we know of as Germany, south to Italy, and then a couple of different parts of modern day countries like Austria, Switzerland, Poland, Czechoslovakia. Okay? All of these were part of the Holy Roman Empire. And it formed in 800 AD, okay? And it went all the way until 1800 AD. But we're not going to see the end of the empire just yet within what we're talking about here. Okay? The time that we really want to focus on starts in about 1440 AD, when the Hapsburgs, which was a family dynasty which was is really one of the most powerful families in the history of Europe. The Habsburgs started to control the Holy Roman Empire. And so the Habsburgs, as we know from the fact that they control the Holy Roman Empire, they are a Catholic dynasty. Okay? And they really held great sway in European life at this time, given their position in land size and in the Catholic Church. Okay? But over time, this sort of dwindles because of the Reformation and the rise of Protestantism, which directly goes against them. So here we see the Holy Roman Empire, huge, huge amounts of land in this time that we're talking about, around 1500. Okay, huge, huge amounts of land, including the city of Florence, which we talked about with the Renaissance. Okay. All right, now, in terms of how we got this information, I've mentioned it earlier. Again, the printing press was a huge part of this. Okay, and really the first big seller out of the printing press was the Bible. Okay, and that is because, again, speaking to the power that religion held within society at this time. Now, in terms of why the Germans wanted to convert, or those who did wanted to convert, okay, German princes saw financial gain in splitting from the Catholic Church. They no longer would have to pay taxes to the Catholic Church. And so they saw this as a good thing. Okay? Uh, the English and German nobility, the nobles, the kings, the princes, the dukes, the rich people, okay, that are part of this upper crust, did not like Italian domination of the church. Okay? Most popes were Italian, especially at this time. And so the fact that it was also headquartered in Rome, they saw this as a affront to their power as well. Okay, but there were some people who wanted to split because of faith-based reasons. They tended to agree with Luther that the Catholic Church needed to change in some ways. Now that brings us over to England, where the Reformation is soon spreading. And the man we're going to talk about here is Henry VIII. Henry VIII was the driver of the Protestant Reformation within England. Um, when Henry VIII uh, wanted to divorce the first of his 8 wives, okay, he was told that the Catholic Church would not allow him to get divorced. And the reason why he wanted to get divorced was that he wanted to have a son, but he was only having daughters. And so he blamed his wives, and he would bring them up on charges in order to get rid of them. And, he wanted to rid England of the Catholic Church, A, because they would not let him divorce, and also B, because he could then take over their land. Okay. Now, he ended up having one son at the end of his run here. However, his son ended up dying. And, so what we see here is his daughters start to take over for him. So after Henry VIII dies, like we said, he doesn't have a male heir to the throne. And so his daughter from his first marriage, Queen Mary, ends up taking over. Okay. And this sort of poses some weirdness within the family because Queen Mary is Catholic. Her mother was a Spanish queen, a Spanish princess who married Henry VIII, and she stayed Catholic. She wanted to remain loyal to the Catholic Church. However, she's moving into a country that is now Protestant. And so immediately upon her taking power, she decides that she's going to force everyone to go back to being Catholic. And she would burn people alive for refusing to become Catholics. And so she became known as Bloody Mary because of this. Okay? And and her trying to kill people for not becoming Catholic was not just, you know, did not just extend to other people, but it also extended to her sister Elizabeth, who was her half sister. And Elizabeth was the daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, who was Henry's second wife. Um, and, during this time, Elizabeth was sort of, you know, excommunicated from the family. She was declared to be illegitimate by Henry VIII and by, some people within England. And she continued to remain Protestant, though. As we said, her father switched to Protestantism, trying to marry Elizabeth's mother. And really, Queen Elizabeth comes to power, though, after Mary dies, with several issues at hand. The first is that there's a lot of infighting within England. Some people are Protestant, some people are Catholic. Okay? Certain royals are Protestant or Catholic. We keep switching back and forth. Okay, and Elizabeth comes in as a Protestant queen. However, Elizabeth does something wise in that she does not want to make enemies of Mary's Catholic supporters. She does not want a full-blown civil war on her hands. However, this puts her at odds with some Protestants who feel like she's not being Protestant enough. Okay, and so some people during this time, and we're talking the late 1500s, early 1600s, accuse her of not being Protestant enough, like the Puritans. And later on down the road, we're going to know the Puritans as the Pilgrims moving over to America and trying to set a standard for strict Protestantism. Okay. She also has another problem. She has another cousin who's named Mary, Queen of Scots, okay, who wanted to claim her throne. However, what ends up happening is that Elizabeth is able to stave off and is able to keep Queen Mary away by challenging the Spanish Armada, who's a Catholic kingdom. And because of her being able to defeat this very well-known navy, that's what an armada is, she became one of the most well-known monarchs, and it really strengthened her power. And she was queen for 45 years within England. With that being said, we're going to talk a lot more about the Reformation, but again, the key points to remember is that this is talking about, at first changes that Martin Luther wants within the Catholic Church, but then a full-blown split of Christianity into two camps, Protestant and Catholic. And we're going to be talking about the consequences of that on Europe and on larger Christianity in the next sections. Have a great day. If you have any questions, let me know, and I will see you guys later. Bye.